everyone. Welcome to the weekly Adobe Creative Educator live stream series. We're so excited to be here with you today, and we have a great show ahead. For those of you I haven't connected with before, my name is Clara Galán, and I lead our educator community programs here at Adobe, and am a former middle school teacher, and have an awesome co-moderator on with me today and a very special guest. So Tanya, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
So hey everybody, I'm Tanya Avrith. I work with Clara on the education and evangelism team, and I work as the education evangelist for North America. And I am also a former teacher, fresh out of the classroom, was teaching high school as of July. So super excited to be here, but even more excited because one of my very favorite humans on the planet is on the call, is on the show with us today. And her name is Dr. Jennifer Williams. And if you don't follow her, you must, because she's amazing. And I'm going to let her introduce herself and share a little bit about what she does, but we're in for a special treat today. So Jen, take it away. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
That's so sweet, Tanya. I really appreciate that. I've loved, Claire and Tanya, how you all have been doing these each week. It's so fun to watch, and I'm excited to join in today. So like Tanya, I'm coming from Florida, and I am an educator here. I work in higher ed. I was in K-12 for 20 years, then moved to higher ed in 2014. Also started doing some work with ed tech companies and finding ways to bridge company to classroom in use of all of these ed tech tools, specifically for me with an interest in global collaboration. So how can we get our students working and thinking in online spaces, which we all right now are jumping into and figuring it out together. So really honored to be here for this conversation today, all about global ed and how can we use online spaces as digital citizens.
And so for those of you who are watching live, feel free to introduce yourself as well. We can see all your comments, and we would love to hear about where you're joining from and what perhaps you would love to get out of Dr. Jen Williams' visit with us today. So hi, Dr. I. So Claire, I'll let you kind of lead with some questions.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll be answering live Q&A at the end of this live stream. So if you have questions throughout, as Tanya said, go ahead and post them in the chat, and we'll highlight some of those questions. But I know for myself and Tanya, you and I have talked about this, but this is a really difficult at times and interesting times as we're navigating a lot of new virtual environments and trying to balance our at-home life and work life. And Jen, how has it been for you, working, with different global companies and managing your own children at home?
Mm-hmm. It's been interesting. So I have our 3 kids are here at home with us. And it's kind of fun to watch because just as when you're in a classroom, and any classroom you go in a school is different from the one next door. It's kind of like that with my own 3 children. So my oldest, Wyatt, he's 20. He's home from college, and now he is operating in an online environment. And college classes are a little bit different, so they're figuring it out in their own way. And then my 17-year-old son, he's a junior. He's an athlete, so he's having to put all of his sports on hold and trying to find ways to get outside and move. So that's been interesting for him. He's working in an online space as well with his high school program. And I mean, they started on Monday. It was really challenging for them with all of Florida going in at one time. And within the first hour, like everything was crashing. And so they're having to pivot and figure things out, but they're figuring it out as they go. And then my 8th grade daughter, she is in a program. She goes to this really interesting school called the Service Learning School, and they go to school on a nature preserve, and they were using an online platform to help them with their content area classroom. So right now she's at home, but accessing all of her virtual classes from her bedroom. So they're all figuring it out. And for me, I already was teaching online. So my university classes, it's a distance learning program. And so my classes were online already, and the work I do with global classrooms, we were already operating in this online space. So I've loved it. I'm able to, when I go on each day and I'm having conversations with an educator in Pakistan, and then Singapore, and then Clara in San Francisco. And before, we would go in and we would just get to business. So any classroom I would talk to, okay, what is our action? And now it's been what's going on where you're at, because we are one world facing this crisis. And so everyone's telling me about their local situation, but it's beautiful, because then they shift right into, but wait till you hear this story. Like, it's always that, listen to this beautiful thing that happened in my my school or with my family, or something I saw online today. So it's hard. And then there's these just beautiful, bright, shining moments that pop out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm kind of wondering, like, what are some trends that you've been seeing with educators online as we're transitioning now to online learning? Like, I know we're connected and we're seeing a lot of these trends. So what are some of the things that you're noticing now?
So teachers are a remarkable bunch. I think this is just something that we never would have expected or signed up for. But I think this is exactly what we're designed for as teachers. So, like, if anyone that's tuning in, if you've ever worked in a school, or if you work in a school now, like, I think of it when you see a fire drill in the school environment, and teachers know exactly what to do. And they're like, okay, I'm grabbing my kids, I'm grabbing my clipboard, we're getting out to where we need to be, I'm checking it off. And it's this beautiful, like, machine that happens. And I think that's what I'm seeing right now. Like, teachers saying, all right, I don't exactly know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out. And they're coming together, they're arm in arm. We have teachers that I know are really being pushed outside of their comfort zone. They've never been in front of a screen before, broadcasting live. And that is, that's hard for some, but they're doing it out of love for their students, and they're supporting their leaders. I think that's something else that I've really seen these teachers saying, you know what, we're all in this together. It brings me back. Like, I remember when I had my first child, Wyatt, who's 20. And I remember being like going from teaching, and then all of a sudden I was home, and I remember calling my mom and I said, I feel like I'm just not learning. And I feel like I'm just kind of like not able to move. I'm just froze. And then a couple of weeks later, she called me. She was like, I found this article, and it said that new moms' brains, like, they did brain scans of new moms, and they're firing all of the time because you're learning, but learning in a new way. And you're having to problem solve, and you're having to invent and be creative. And it's not the same type of learning you were doing before, but it's more, it's just different. So I think we're seeing teachers that are pushing past their own definitions and boundaries of what learning looked like before. And they're saying that learning can look like a puzzle on the dining room table, and kids out in their backyard exploring. So I think it's different, and it's really neat to see.
Yeah. And we have a couple more people joining in, Jen, and a quick question before we move on from Joseph. Hi, Joseph. I know you're joining from Colorado. He just asked, can you define what you mean by global classroom?
That's a great question. Yeah. So a global classroom, and I think that the definition for that is going to vary depending on where you're at. For me, and it probably varies for me year to year. So when I started at my school, we were a Montessori world school, and I thought we had global classrooms. We had students from all parts of the world. We were trilingual. We were studying cultures and customs and clothing and holidays. And I felt like we were kind of checking our box on being a global classroom. And for me, it wasn't until I started to really venture out, connect with teachers like you and people all around the world, to realize it wasn't just about learning about the other classrooms around the world. It was actually working with them, hearing perspectives of other students. What were the problems and challenges they were facing? So for me, it's how can we take our students within the walls of our classrooms, and right now we're even beyond that, and connect with others. So share our perspectives, have a meaningful audience to request feedback from, to gain new perspectives, and to learn about how our world, I think what we're really seeing right now, is so much more interconnected than just at the local level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and within those online environments, I know this could be new for a lot of students and for a lot of teachers, and the concept of digital citizenship comes up quite a bit. So, what role does digital citizenship play when it comes to bringing students into this global audience for the first time?
Mm-hmm. So it's changing a lot right now. I think the answer this month is so different than a couple of months ago. A couple of months ago, I remember, and it was just in January. It just feels like yesterday, but I was in conversations with a large district in the United States, and we were talking about virtual exchange. And so they wanted to incorporate global collaboration at the elementary level. And so they were saying, but we really have to be cognizant of privacy. So we're not comfortable putting our students in front of screens. And so it was decision making, when it's that large of a district and you have to make decisions from the top down for all, everything kind of changes on what you're able to do at the classroom level. And so when I think of digital citizenship, like, yes, you can read about it, but it's actually those building of skills happens in real time doing this type of work. And so now to think what we all in the last month have had to say, okay, let's figure out a tool, let's find a way to make it happen, and let's jump right in. And different from, okay, we're going to go slow and steady over the course of, with that large district, it maybe would have taken me 3 years to get a pilot going for virtual exchange. Now, every student in almost every district here, we're moving into this. And so, I was even yesterday, my niece, she's in middle school, and she had people jump in inappropriately to her call. And so I think a couple of months ago, we maybe would have, if I think back to that district and that would have happened, everything would have been shut down. But now it's a process of iteration, like, okay, well, let's figure it out together. And we're not going to shut it down, but maybe we're going to put in new controls and privacy settings, and we're going to keep moving forward. So I think this process of, we're kind of in that design session type of thinking right now and figuring it out as we go.
Well, with digital citizenship in mind, what are some of the ways that educators who are tuning in and watching this recording can bring students into this new virtual international environment? Like, what are some of the things that you could help, give them some tips around?
So I'd love to share some tips. I can share too an example. Let me see if I can share my screen. So this is a project we've had. So this is a project we've been working on called the Take Action Project. Are you able to see my screen, Clara and Tanya?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, perfect. So we had actually started this project with Global Classrooms on March 1st. So this is something we had been planning for since last fall. And this is a project anyone can join. We have global projects. Our kind of goal is anyone, anywhere. And so this is a project that we had designed in response to the UN Secretary General. This year is the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. And so he put a call out to the world to help him answer the question of what kind of world do we want to create? So we have designed, this is in work I do with Take Action Global with my partner Koen Timmers in Belgium, this 9-week experience. So it's this immersive online experience for classrooms K-12. And so we started off in March. This is when schools were still in session and everyone was working on site at the level of South. Then we moved to local. And right now we're at this global level. So we had questions in the beginning. What kind of world do we want to create? Are all people treated fairly and equally? So working at the level of social inclusion. Right now, we're at this level of environmental justice at the level of the planet. And so we have students coming together from all countries. We have 500 classrooms participating. So all different countries, all around the world. And they're working in these online spaces. So in the beginning, we started off at the level of self and had them. So they're using creativity tools to create digital badges for the project. So you can see.
Oh, wow.
Aren't they beautiful?
Oh my goodness.
So then we have high school students here. We have kindergarten students. Some of them are digital. Some of them are analog. And then they're using this tool Padlet to share their voices with the world. So that was a project we started off with. And then now they're starting to get to these deeper levels of learning. This is an example of a classroom in Poland. And so they used Wakelet to document their learning. So what they were able to do they're asking, so we went through a process of interviewing. So they're interviewing people at local levels that represented perspectives other than their own to design a community at the local level that they would hope to build. So like here you can see, this is the city they don't want. They don't want smog and landfills and trucks. They want less exhaust and planting trees and more bikes. So they're able to share that out with classrooms. Here's another one. This is a classroom in Colorado. And so we've had a couple of things fall right in what we're doing. So we had International Women's Day. We had Earth Hour. So an hour this past weekend where everyone turned their lights off. And then we also had coronavirus. And so what we were able to do is say, okay, all of these hundreds of classrooms that are already joining in, please let others know, because if they're looking to find a way to use ed tech in a purposeful way, then they're welcome to join in with us. And so right now we're at this level. And then next week, so yesterday we had a really cool webinar with WWF, so World Wildlife Fund. This is where we're at right now. So we move through this process of human-centered design. So they do inspiration activities. They were examining the purpose and mission statement of World Wildlife Fund. They were looking at the logo. So we're thinking about how do we understand these different organizations as trusted experts, which is something I think we'll talk about a little later. And then they're using this app called Seek to take pictures of their backyards and their home environments to share about one plant and one animal. And so this is where they're at right now. And you can see, I saw a little bit ago, we had a couple classrooms. So we already had a couple classrooms joining. Yeah. And so like this is another classroom in Colorado. And so they're starting to share up plants and animals in their natural environment. So we'll get together. Yep. And then next week we move to the national or the universe level, and we'll be working with NASA. So we have a webinar coming up.
So I just want to say this. First of all, I'm always amazed by the projects that you do, like global projects with kids around the world. And I want to just say, like, right now is the best opportunity to dive into a project like this. Like, for the most part, most states, I think all, right, have like canceled state testing. I could be wrong, but like, correct me if I'm wrong. At least most that I've heard of it. I know I can speak for Florida. So like right now, schools are doing, they have a lot more freedom with curriculum. And by the way, this will meet all your standards, PS, just FYI, for those of you who are not comfortable, but like, wouldn't it? Like this already, like this will meet all your standards, and it's meaningful for your kids who are home. This is relevant to their lives. It's relevant to what's happening. So good, Jen.
It brings us as educators like this hope, because instead of like focusing on, so I was meeting with my university students last week, and it was kind of right when we were all thrust into everything. And I had some of my students had just lost their job that day, and I was needing to talk to them. I teach my courses literacy across the curriculum, and I was going to be talking about math across the curriculum. And I'm like, are we even at a point like right now where I can be talking about math and how we're going to incorporate literacy into it? It's like, no, I need to speak to their minds and their souls and calm them and be there for them. And same with me, like we're all in this together. So I think you're right, Tanya. I think now more than ever, it's just so relevant and important.
And it's available. So David was just asking, do you have a blog, something I can share with my colleagues? This is so engaging. How do you direct people to get involved?
So for the Take Action Project, two things. We're very active on social media. So we have all of our teachers posting using the hashtag Take Action Project. And so you can, if you're just wanting to kind of lurk and see what's happening with the project, you're more than welcome to jump into the conversation there. If it's something you want to look at doing, so we have, if you go to tag.community, which is the website, you can go there, get all of the information. Everything is free. It always will be free. We just want to connect classrooms. We're going to move into virtual exchanges next week. So we'll be able to have some class-to-class collaborations and get kids talking and sharing, which is, I think we did the webinar yesterday with WWF, and it was such rich, beautiful content. But the chat box was more like, I've never seen kids so engaged with talking. I think they're just like craving it. Like, what is the weather like in Macedonia. Like, I want to know more what's going on. Like, I think they just want to talk to their friends.
There's so many kids isolated at home. Any interaction is so nice with others. And then to meet new people and learn about their world, right? It's so relevant and exciting for everyone right now. I'm so excited. I'm like, I'll call someone like, hey, calling, say hi.
I love it. I know. So yeah, we'd love to have anyone join in. And we'll have more projects next year too. So we'll kick off again. We have the goals project in September. So that's focused specifically on the global goals. And then we have a climate action project following that. So we keep going with projects to support our schools.
This is why I see everybody why I love Jen. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. That's what you are. You're like, so
you're doing so many things. And so just one more time for people who are commenting, if they want to take part in that, they just have to search for hashtag Take Action Project. Is that correct?
Take Action Project hashtag, and then they can go to the website to register, and it's tag.community.
Perfect. Put that in.
So do you have any tips perhaps that maybe you can share with people to kind of, as they're thinking about maybe getting started, or like things that they could be thinking about, as they're kind of entering this environment? Like, I think that you've been doing like this kind of collaborative online, you've been doing virtual projects with students and teachers for years. So like, what would be some of the tips that you might share from your experience as someone who's done it for so long, as for those who are kind of new to this space?
So I was thinking through that. And so I organized into 5 buckets. So 5 tips I would recommend. But really, I think even before that, it's just trust in your instinct. I think for any teacher, you know what to do, just to do your work that you would normally do in your class and love on those kids. But for teachers that are specifically thinking, okay, what are the nuts and bolts of moving into online learning and distance learning, and how might I think of connecting my classroom with others? So the first thing I think for me is to know your co-learning space. And normally I would probably have just said learning space, but I think right now we're in this co-learning environment. I love that I get to see teacher and student as co-learners through this process. And I was watching with my own daughter, and she was moving. As I mentioned, she already worked in an online space at her physical school, but they didn't use that tool for connection and collaboration, obviously, because they were together. So she's now using Discord. And I was like, Discord, what an interesting choice, which is, if you're not familiar with Discord, it's like an esports gaming type of platform. But the administrators of that school looked to the students and said, where are you already communicating and collaborating? And we'll meet you there. So instead of saying, let's bring you into our space, they went to her space. So I think thinking of your learning space, which is right now an online learning space, what I found in my online learning space with my university students is the importance of over communicating and not making any assumptions. So I send tons of messages. I know, Clara, we were talking about Remind. I send tons of Remind messages to my students. I'm always checking in. I'm not making any assumptions. So if I have them in an online space and all of a sudden I see, some teachers are saying, yeah, but they're using the chat box inappropriately. I think for us, it's let's not make the assumption that they know they need to be appropriate in those spaces, because maybe they're using this type of tool in a different way. So just having those conversations and communicate. Another one would be consider the connections. So I've really been intentional right now about just kind of observing and witnessing, being very mindful about what I'm putting out into the world. So what I'm putting out into the physical world. So I'm conserving paper towels and conserving light, but also what I'm putting out into a digital world. Like, I'm really thoughtful, and I try to be very thoughtful about what I'm putting on social media. How can we see where we all fit into this bigger picture, which right now we're living it. So we know, like, we're talking about what's happening in Asia and what's happening in Europe, and we care. Like, in the United States, we were hurting the last few weeks for Italy, and now we're hearing messages that they're hurting in support of us. So What are those connections that are right in front of us? And we've been talking about social emotional learning a lot the past few years in education. This is empathy in action. So we're seeing it right in front of us. Number 3 would be reference sources. And so we're talking about this a lot in our classrooms already, but I think this is an opportunity where if we have students say that they heard this, so I know in my university, there were rumors that students had these positive tests for coronavirus and people got very nervous, but then they said that actually wasn't true. So I think with anything that we're hearing right now, and we were even doing it with our Take Action project around looking at the UN, is that a trusted expert? And so we researched and we figured, yes, this is for us. We deem this group a trusted expert. So check your sources. I think to Tanya's point, we're at that point right now where we can slow down. We can have those conversations. When someone hears, well, they said, find out precisely, like, can you put a proper noun and name on they to know who referenced that fact or that piece of data. Also, use this moment. We have a lot of authors and artists and experts that are available right now and ready to contribute. So reach out. And, the worst thing that they can do is say, not right now, but I think experts and authors and artists are interested in joining with students. So.
And Jen, what's a great way to do that? Because I know I've used Twitter in the past to reach out to authors or other interviewees. What would you recommend for a teacher who is interested in doing that?
So I've done this a couple times in the past. I try to find out where they are. So sometimes it's going to their own website and then emailing them. And then sometimes it might be on Twitter or on Facebook. So I try to find out where they're at and then I go in that route. 2 more. So the last 2 tips. So I think work with purpose. And so with a greater purpose, I think, but also purposefully. So what are we asking of our students? What are we also asking of our parents? And what are we asking of ourselves too, as teachers? And so teachers are going through this all right now as well. So I think we need to be gentle on ourselves, gentle on our colleagues, and slow and steady. I don't think this is just a moment to kind of breathe and not feel the need to push through. And lastly, it would be seek progress over perfection. And this is where I think back to that district that I had talked to, where before it had to be perfect, it had to be precise. And now we just need forward progress. As long as we're making forward progress each day, focusing on the moment, then I think we're moving in the right direction.
I think that's such great advice. Seek progress over perfection. I think that we need to be easier on ourselves as teachers, especially, and parents, that it's okay if your kids aren't getting everything right now. And, I've accepted that I'm not going to get through all of my son's lessons. And I've had a conversation with his teacher and she knows that what we can get through is what we can get through. And that's okay. And then she's super hard on herself when something doesn't go well. And I'll say, oh my God, don't worry about it. You're doing so great. Like everyone, it's okay. Like now is the time to try things out. And so I think that's such great advice. I definitely, I'm definitely very excited about the opportunities of where we can take our classes and where we can go moving forward. And I know that you also do some work with the TeachSDGs. For those people who are not familiar, maybe that would be great to kind of introduce them to what those are.
Absolutely. So if you're not familiar yet with the SDGs, these are 17 goals we as a world agreed upon in the year 2015 to reach by the year 2030. So we were already just entering in January this decade of action. And so now, it's like, oh yeah, we absolutely need to, every single one of us, take action right now. So these are goals around things like gender equality and poverty and life below water and peace and justice and sustainable cities. So all sorts of different things that directly connect to our content and to our standards. So we have a very engaged group of over 30,000 educators that are working each day to bring these goals to the classroom. Again, that's a free group. It's just a community of volunteers. So you can check that out, TeachSDGs.org. And that's where we do some of our projects as well. So I'd love for anyone that's interested to join in there. So there's work for pre-K students all the way up through university.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Jen, and seeing some excitement in the chat here and some new folks that have joined in. And I've seen a lot on social media when it comes to SDGs and sharing different activities in the classroom. I'm continued to be amazed by all the work that you do, and curious if there are any other nonprofits or third-party organizations that you would also recommend to teachers as they're getting started with this new global classroom.
Mm-hmm. One that I've been looking to for a while now is IDEO, and probably Clara, you've had some experience working with them out in San Francisco. I just love the human-centered design process, and so that's what I had mentioned that we're going through. So inspiration, and then ideation, and then implementation. There, the team behind that. But they have. I just saw if this is a new organization for anyone that's joining in, they have a webinar that they're putting on next week that I just signed up for. It's with their chief creative officer and then the chief marketing officer of Pinterest. And it's insights on building a vibrant global community. And I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I want. I know.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm going to be tuning in for that one. So that's.
I'm going to tune in for that too. I got to book that.
Yeah. I'll send it your way.
Yeah.
We'll definitely post that in the comments here. But Jen, before we hop off, I want to make sure if there are any questions for those who are tuning live in the chat. If you have a question, go ahead and post it in here for Dr. Jennifer Williams to answer. It could be, regarding any of those 5 points that she covered, or just in general, getting started with approaching a virtual environment with your students in a global classroom.
Jen, I'm so inspired by all of this. And as I'm waiting for some of the questions to potentially pop in, thank you for the work that you do in creating these projects with your team and your partner. This is definitely a passion without question. And we do so appreciate all the work that you're doing. And it's so inspirational. Like I every time I hear about the work you do, and I speak to you obviously quite regularly, but I'm always so amazed. And I think that this is the way that schools will go. I feel hopeful that this is going to be exciting a new direction in terms of how we can approach the purpose of school and what we do. And so thank you for leading in this space. It's pretty awesome. And for those of you who don't know, Jen actually is an author, and she's really humble and she would never do this, but she has a book. So I can do it because it's amazing, and it's called Teach Boldly. And she has projects and you can go in there and get ideas, and it's definitely a great resource right now. There's no question about it. I think, Clara, did you have any resources that you wanted to share as well?
Yeah, so I'm going to post Jen's book in the chat here as well. So if you're interested in that, it's a really amazing resource, especially as you're approaching, a global classroom for the first time, and has a lot of excellent strategies in there. The last resource I wanted to just share is from Adobe Education. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see.
And we're going to share some show notes moving forward, on our Facebook group and on our own Twitter as well. And we're going to start a Pinterest board with them as well. So be on the lookout for that. So we're going to be curating all these resources that we share and that our guests share as well.
Yeah, so if you go to edx.adobe.com/distance-learning, we are updating this page on a weekly basis. So what we really want to be able to do is to curate resources for educators to connect with one another, and then just best practices of distance learning. So for those of you who are approaching it for the first time, whether that's synchronous, communicating with students over Zoom, or if you're recording instructional videos for the first time, there are a lot of great resources in here that have been developed by Adobe Education community members, to curated resources from third parties like Edutopia and others. So I encourage you to check out this page. I'll go ahead and post it in the chat there. But if you have questions about that, or if you have recommendations for us, like this is a new opportunity for our team to be able to best support you and connect you to one another. So we're constantly looking for suggestions, other resources that we can add to this page. Perfect. So it looks like we have one question here, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, from Mario. So I'm going to go ahead and post that here. And Mario asks, this is kind of a general question, but Jen, can you share some tips for SEL, social emotional learning, in a remote learning environment?
Oh, hi, Mario. I love that we get to see our friends. Hi, our own little meetup. That's a great question. So we do, I know we're constantly talking about social emotional learning, skills like building empathy and perseverance. And I think we're living in that right now. A couple of things I've done with my students, and it's SEL, but also just relationship building, is in my online space. I'm always listening and trying to hear on those points that they might say that they're thinking ahead to a special event, something that's on their mind. And then I'll make a note of that in my calendar. So maybe they'll say, oh, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be traveling to this location, or my mom's going to be going through this surgery, or whatever it may be. So I try to take those notes and then message individually to the students just to check in. So I think with our students, we can kind of listen for those same types of information that they're sharing that maybe they're a little nervous about, and then just do those individual check-ins for our kids. I feel like that in itself, if we can just get into our individual students and sharing with them beyond what we're doing in our broader classrooms online, it can let them know that they're on our mind and that we're thinking of them.
So, and I have another thought to that. Jenny McGarrah, who is now at Google, I once heard her share something pretty cool that she used to do in her face-to-face classroom, but I feel like this would work really well, and it's super simple. She had mood check-ins when the students would come in with a Google form. And I mean, you can use whatever tool, but like she would do like a private, in this case, it's, the child has an opportunity to kind of just share a little bit about their mood. And that could be something really nice as well, that the kids come in, they have a private space where they can just kind of like a couple questions, and just to kind of give you a sense of like how they're feeling, what they're doing. If there's anything that you can help them with. It must be hard for so many kids. We don't know what their home lives are like right now. And just to have someone say like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Might be really nice. So that could be an idea as well.
I love that. And I know when we had Dr. I on for one of our previous shows, she was saying, it's morning coffee, and you just check in with your students in the morning, and just again, even though we're not in person, it's all about building those human relationships. And that's ultimately that, what can really help continue the learning. But we have time for one more question before we wrap it up. So I'm going to go ahead and put in Julie's question here. But Julie asks, are there any tips for working with district IT departments to help them offer so many of these opportunities? We run into roadblocks with them a lot. So Jen, any advice for that?
And again, I think this is one of those ones that we're all figuring out together as we go. And I probably would have answered it differently a couple months ago. I think for me, it's start small and look at the tools you're already doing and how you can bring in this work into the work you're already doing. So a lot of people will say, that's great around global ed, and I'd love to do that, but I have classroom management and parents and parent ed nights. I have all these other things. So it's, how can we bring this into the work you're already doing? And then I think involving your district IT department in those conversations. So saying, here's something that I'm thinking of. Would you be willing to help? And then just that power, I think there's power in the invitation and asking them for support. And so starting small, saying, I just want to start with this one class or this one day and see how it goes. I feel like IT departments right now are jumping in arm in arm with teachers. They're kind of banding together and saying, we've got to figure this out. So I think they're going to want to hear from teachers. And so that would be my best advice. Bring them in and start small.
Well, we want to thank you so much, Jen, for coming on today. These are great tips. I'm learning so much and I feel so inspired. So hopefully those of you who are watching will feel inspired to maybe take the leap and try something different in the next few months with your students and make that learning meaningful. We are super excited about our show next week as well. We have Natasha Rochelle and Felisa Ford, and they will be coming in from Atlanta Public Schools talking about how we can ensure equity while we are in this space of distance learning. And so they're going to share their experience from Atlanta Public Schools and share the amazing work that they're doing there. So please join us next week as well. Clara, did you want to add anything?
No, that's it. I'm really excited for next week to talk about equity and providing access to students. And overall, Jen, thank you so much for joining us. I feel like every time I talk to you, and I know we talk almost daily, I learn something new. You're so amazing. So thanks so much for taking the time. Our hearts
love you.
with us, and hopefully, I'm sure it's inspired educators as they're making that first leap.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate everything you both do and everything Adobe does for our classrooms today. So,
and we appreciate you. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone so much for joining in, and we'll see you next Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time for our weekly live stream, the Adobe Creative Educator Show. So we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching. Click the link in the description below to explore more free online professional development, and click the link on screen to subscribe to the channel for more videos.